Hi, it's Kat Loretta from Elevate for Self Love. Today's topic is going to be adaptability in codependence. This is something that I started thinking about recently, and it's interesting because I was thinking like, wow, I really adapted to a lot as a child. I was living in an abusive household. I was um, an only child, and I became extremely adaptable to my environments. And I think that's a part of codependency that doesn't get discussed as much, but I think it's a coping mechanism. Like it's discussed that emotionally codependents will adapt and change based upon the environments that they're in, like as a child, because they will try to please um, parents or caretakers so that there isn't conflict. So the codependent will be like a chameleon and try to anticipate people's needs so they can meet those needs and kind of warp into somebody who's going to fix everything as a child. Then that carries on. But what I don't hear discussed as much is how adaptable you then become. So I become a very highly successful adult. And the reason why is because I became extremely adaptable to my environments. And I look back now noticing how my own personal evolution as a person, emotionally, psychologically, physically, has been based upon adaptability and my ability to like roll with things. So, you know, when I was younger, I didn't have as many friends. I was socially awkward. I was bullied when I was in elementary school. And it was partially because my mother and father didn't know how to teach me how to have social skills. They didn't have the greatest social skills. They had a very small um like a very small group of friends that they were friends with since high school, and they were not like the kind of people who were the types to pick up new friends and be sociable and have parties outside the circle. It was pretty much like that was their circle. So what happened was, because they couldn't teach me how to be sociable and how to make new friends and how to sort of be a people person, I had to learn on my own. My mother didn't have a mother that was around too much. So also my mother didn't have the ability to pass on to me things about being a woman, like how to do your hair, how to do your makeup, how to date. Like I didn't have anybody telling me how to do this. I had to pick this up like along the way. And I did. I wound up like, from there were teachers in high school that I picked things up from. And then there were friends and they had mothers that taught them how to do things. And then I was able to pick up things like, and then practicing makeup on my own. I would just practice and practice. So over time, I picked up all these things. And, but it was adaptability. It was like I had to learn all these things from outside sources. Then once I started in business, when I was, probably like 20, I guess 2021, I started in business. I then learned how to dress for business, how to speak for business, how to react, how to have the right body language for business. There's so many different facets, and also depends on the business you're in. So there's so much to learn even then at that um, place in life, how to put on that business look and and the ability to act like a business person. There's certain facets of that you wouldn't know, so you have to be adaptable to pick this stuff up and then run with that and be able to speak in a certain way, like confident and sure of yourself. especially in business, you have to come across confident and sure of yourself, not insecure, not small, not um, because if you do come across that way, then people will think you don't know what you're talking about. So you need to come across like you know exactly what you're talking about. And over time, you practice over and over again, and you will. But it takes adaptability. You have to be able to adapt your personality to a point where you're able to interact in different scenarios and dynamics between people. And I think like as a codependent, like you really learned how to do that. So I ultimately went from being bullied and like really like having barely any friends when I was younger. I had a few close friends, but not, a lot. Now I have so many friends. And it's because over time, especially when I went into business, being in my 20s, I learned how to socialize. It's actually like a skill that you have to learn. I learned how to socialize. I learned how to speak to people so that they would want to continue speaking to me. And, you know, um, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books about this type of dynamic and how to be sociable, how to be in business, how to, books about money, books about success, books about um, business. And from reading all of those things and then living and listening, and I think listening is like one big thing. Like I would listen when I first started in business. How did my bosses speak on the phone? What were they saying? How did they speak? How did they phrase things? And then I would copy that. And that's how I learned. So I think adaptability and, you know, learning how to be a chameleon and not changing your whole personality, but knowing, where you can improve and where you don't need to improve, you don't need to, but learning different skill sets for different environments and different professions. There's a lot that I feel like I have now mastered. I'm still always trying to grow as a person. I'm still making mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But I've mastered a certain level, and now I'm trying to up level myself even more. So there's always things to work on. But the adaptability issue is like if you're not adaptable and you can't pick all this stuff up over time, I don't know that you can be successful. I think that this part of me, the adaptability piece, is why I have become so successful. It's a strong part of why I've become so successful. I'm also like very driven and very creative, and I push and I push and I push for the things that I want, and I'm very persistent in what I want. So there were some things that, I was maybe not going to get, and I did. Like my first house was, touch and go. Like I was pretty young and didn't have a lot of money, but I pushed and I pushed and it almost fell through, and then I finally got it. And then same thing with my beach house. I was pre-approved for a much larger amount. Turned out that I couldn't qualify for that, and then I wound up barely getting the beach house that I now have. Um, but it's like I was creative in the problem solving. That's another thing. Like I think with this idea of adaptability comes with this capacity to problem solve. You have to be able to really problem solve and research and reach out to your connections and try everything you can to solve a problem that you might have. So when these things happen to me, when I hit roadblocks in my own life with achieving my own goals, I will start reaching out to people that I know who might be able to help me, people that I know who might have the knowledge, because that's what it's about. It's about being able to learn from people who have the knowledge, more knowledge than me about certain things, and then learning from those people a little bit more. Now, maybe I don't need to learn everything. Like for instance, like mortgages. I don't need to know. I don't want to be a mortgage person. I don't need to know everything about mortgages. I need to know a bit about it so I can know what I'm getting into, um, and what my options are. But I don't need to be professional. I need a mortgage person that I trust who's a professional that I can use. So at this point, in life, I've realized that my persistence, my hard work, my adaptability, my ability to problem solve, to research things, even researching online, I do a lot of research online about things that I'm curious about. So if I'm going to get involved in something, I will research it and make sure that I am, schooled in that thing. And then I'll get involved in it, whatever it might be. So I hope this helps you. I think codependent people like tend to read others and they're always trying to fix situations. And I think part of that though is a positive later on in life when you're trying to fix your own life. If you can apply the same kind of um, patterns to fixing problems as you did as a kid, maybe it may not have been positive, but you did learn problem solving skills that you can now use in your adult life, and they can benefit you and maybe make you very successful. I mean, a long time ago, a therapist said to me, with what you've been through in your life, you were either going to wind up in a gutter like a drug addict, or you were going to wind up super successful. And she's like, thank God you wound up super successful. So I'll leave you with that. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, subscribe, and share with friends.